Episode 1 began with Marcus checking his reflection in the darkened window of the downtown bistro, adjusting his tie for the third time even though it already sat perfectly. Blind dates were never his thing, but his sister had insisted this woman, Lena, was different. Smart, charming, old-fashioned, she had said. Marcus took a breath as Lena arrived, elegant and confident, her smile practiced but warm. Conversation flowed easily at first: work, travel, favorite books. She laughed at the right moments, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Still, something felt rehearsed, like she was following a script. Marcus brushed the feeling aside, blaming his nerves. The waitress, a young woman with tired eyes and a stiff posture, approached their table to take orders. As she set down the water glasses, her gaze lingered on Lena for a fraction of a second too long. There was a flicker of recognition, then something darker, fear, maybe. Lena noticed it too and smiled politely, though her fingers tightened around her menu. When the waitress left, Lena's smile returned, brighter than before, and she steered the conversation toward Marcus's investments and lifestyle. He answered cautiously, wondering why she seemed more curious about his finances than his passions. Midway through the meal, the waitress returned with their food. As she placed Marcus's plate down, her hand trembled. A folded napkin slipped onto the table near his fork. Lena was busy adjusting her hair, distracted by a message on her phone. Marcus glanced at the waitress, who avoided his eyes but gave the smallest shake of her head, as if warning him not to draw attention. When she walked away, Marcus unfolded the napkin. Inside, written in hurried ink, were the words, "She's not who you think. Please be careful." His heart thudded. He looked up at Lena, who was smiling again, unaware, or pretending to be. Marcus forced himself to act normal, tucking the note into his pocket. His mind raced through possibilities. Was this a prank, a jealous ex, or something far worse? He watched Lena more closely now, noticing how she deflected personal questions and mirrored his opinions just a little too perfectly. When he excused himself to the restroom, he passed the waitress near the service station. She glanced around, then whispered, "I can't say more here. Just don't trust her." Episode 2 unfolded with tension coiled tight in Marcus's chest as he returned to the table. Lena asked if everything was okay, her eyes searching his face. He nodded, offering a casual smile, but inside he was on high alert. He steered the conversation away from money, asking about her childhood, her family. Her answers were vague, oddly inconsistent with things she'd said earlier. Marcus began to see the cracks beneath her polished exterior. When the bill came, Lena insisted they split it, a move that felt calculated, like she was testing something. Marcus paid anyway, standing as she slipped on her coat. As they walked toward the exit, the waitress caught his attention one last time, subtly tapping her own wrist as if pointing to time running out. Outside, the night air felt heavy. Lena suggested going somewhere quieter, more private. Marcus hesitated, the warning echoing in his mind. He made an excuse about an early meeting and offered to call her a ride instead. For a brief moment, irritation flashed across Lena's face before she masked it with a soft laugh. "Another time then," she said, leaning in for a hug that felt more like an inspection than affection. As her car pulled away, Marcus stood alone, replaying every moment of the evening. Later that night, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, Lena, under a different name, standing beside a man Marcus recognized from a recent financial fraud case. Beneath it was a single line, "I tried to warn you in time." Marcus realized the blind date hadn't been an accident at all. It had been a setup, and he had narrowly stepped out of the trap. Marcus barely slept that night. The image on his phone kept replaying in his mind, Lena standing too close to a man whose face had been splashed across financial news channels months ago. By morning, curiosity had turned into unease, and unease into resolve. He replied to the unknown number, asking who they were and why they cared. Hours passed with no response. At work, he found himself distracted, jumping every time his phone buzzed. When a reply finally came, it was short, "Meet me after my shift. Same place. Back alley. I'll explain." That evening, Marcus returned to the bistro, choosing a corner table where he could see the entrance. The waitress appeared near closing time, now in a hoodie instead of her uniform, her hair pulled back. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, but exhaustion lined her face. She introduced herself as Maya and explained that she'd recognized Lena immediately because Lena used to come in with different men, always well-dressed, always asking questions that didn't quite fit casual dates. One of those men had been Maya's brother. He'd trusted Lena, invested money with someone she introduced him to, and disappeared shortly after. The police called it voluntary, but Maya knew better. Maya said she'd tried to warn other men before, but most didn't listen. Some even laughed. A few weeks later, she'd seen their photos pop up online connected to lawsuits, frozen accounts, or criminal investigations. Lena never seemed to face consequences. She always vanished at the right moment. Marcus felt a chill settle in his stomach as he realized how carefully the trap had been designed. His wealth, his public profile, his recent media attention, it all made him a perfect target. Over the next few days, Marcus and Maya stayed in contact. He shared what he knew about the fraud case, and she filled in gaps with faces and dates she remembered. Patterns began to form. Lena didn't steal directly. She positioned herself as a trusted connector, nudging people toward the wrong partners at the wrong time. When things collapsed, she was gone. Marcus pulled strings quietly, calling in favors with old colleagues and investigators who owed him one. Each confirmation tightened the knot around Lena's carefully crafted identity. Episode 4 unfolded like a slow-burning game of chess. Marcus didn't confront Lena. Instead, he reached out, acting apologetic for cutting the date short, suggesting another meeting. Her response came quickly, warm and enthusiastic, as if nothing had happened. They agreed to meet at a gallery opening, public and crowded. Marcus looped in Maya and an investigator friend, setting things in motion without tipping his hand. At the gallery, Lena was radiant, slipping easily back into charm and laughter. Marcus played his part, asking questions he already knew the answers to, watching how effortlessly she lied. When she introduced him to a business associate, Marcus recognized the name immediately, another shell identity tied to the same network. The investigator lingered nearby, blending in, recording everything. Maya watched from across the room, her jaw tight with contained anger. The turning point came when Marcus casually mentioned an investment opportunity that didn't exist, baiting the hook. Lena's interest sharpened instantly. She offered to introduce him to someone who could fast-track the process. That was the opening. Marcus excused himself, and moments later, security blocked the exits as authorities stepped in. Lena's smile faltered for the first time, confusion flickering into panic as names were spoken and evidence presented. As she was escorted away, Lena's eyes found Marcus. The charm was gone, replaced by cold calculation and something like regret, or maybe just frustration at being outplayed. Later, as the gallery returned to its hushed buzz, Marcus stood with Maya outside, the night air feeling lighter than before. Justice wouldn't bring her brother back, but it was a start. For Marcus, the blind date had nearly been a disaster, but it had also exposed a truth he wouldn't forget. Sometimes the quietest warnings were the ones that saved you. The aftermath moved faster than Marcus expected. News of the arrest didn't break publicly, but within certain circles, Lena's name began to circulate in whispers, tied to sealed indictments and ongoing investigations. Marcus was called in more than once to give statements, walking investigators through every conversation, every subtle red flag he'd noticed in hindsight. Each retelling made him more aware of how close he'd come to being another silent casualty. Through it all, Maya stayed in touch, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to share another memory that suddenly made sense now. As the case widened, more victims came forward. Some had lost money, others reputations, and a few, like Maya's brother, had vanished entirely. Marcus used his resources to help fund private searches and legal support, not out of guilt, but responsibility. He had been spared by chance and a scribbled note, others hadn't been so lucky. Late one night, as he reviewed documents, he found himself staring at the original napkin Maya had written on. The ink had smudged, but the message still carried weight. A simple warning had changed the course of everything. Episode 6 unfolded more quietly, but with deeper consequences. Months passed. Lena's network unraveled piece by piece, exposing a system built on trust and manipulation. Marcus's name remained confidential, but the experience changed how he moved through the world. He became more cautious, more observant, listening not just to words but to silences and glances. He and Maya met often now, sometimes over coffee at a different cafe, sometimes walking without talking at all. Shared loss had created an understanding that didn't need explanation. One evening, Maya admitted she'd been afraid to write the note that night. She'd worried Lena might see, that she'd lose her job, that nothing would come of it anyway. Marcus told her the truth, that without that moment of courage, he would have followed Lena anywhere. The realization sat heavily between them. They weren't celebrating a victory, they were acknowledging survival. The final hearing came and went without drama. Lena pleaded out, trading information for a reduced sentence. It wasn't justice in the way stories promised, but it was enough to stop the cycle. When it was over, Marcus felt an unexpected emptiness, as if the tension that had driven him for months had vanished, leaving space he didn't know how to fill. He found himself standing outside the same bistro one night, watching strangers inside laugh and talk, unaware of how fragile trust could be. In the end, Marcus didn't swear off blind dates, but he changed how he approached people. He learned that danger rarely announced itself loudly, it wore charm, patience, and perfect smiles. Maya moved on too, enrolling in classes she'd put off, planning a life not defined solely by what she'd lost. They remained part of each other's lives, not bound by romance, but by a shared moment when one person chose to speak instead of staying silent. The story didn't end with headlines or applause. It ended with awareness, with quieter choices made every day. A note, a warning, a pause at the right moment, that was all it had taken to turn a disaster into something else entirely. And for Marcus, that was enough.